Vasudevaya. This morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 34. Bhagavan Brahma Katsnyena Sri Anvikshya Manishaya Tadadya Vasyat Kutasto Rati Atman Yato Bhavet Bhagavan Brahma Katsnyena Sri Anvikshya Manishaya Tadadya Vasyat Kutasto Rati Atman Yato Bhavet. Bhagavan, the great personality Brahma, Brahma, the Vedas, Katsnyena, by summarization, three times, Anvikshya, scrutinizingly examined, Manishaya, with scholarly attention, Tat, that, Adyavasyat, ascertained, ascertained it, Kutasta, with concentration of the mind, Rati, attraction, Atman, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, Yata, by which, Bhavet, it so happens. Translation. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna is the highest perfection of religion. Translation, please repeat. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times. After scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna is the highest perfection of religion. Purport. See, Sukadeva Goswami is referring to the highest Vedic authority, Lord Brahma, who is a qualitative incarnation of Godhead. The Vedas were taught to Brahmaji in the beginning of the material creation. Although Brahmaji was to hear Vedic instructions directly from the personality of Godhead in order to satisfy the inquisitiveness of all prospective students of the Vedas, Brahmaji, just like a scholar, studied the Vedas 3 times as generally done by all scholars. He studied with great attention, concentrating on the purpose of the Vedas, and after scrutinizingly examining the whole process, he ascertained that becoming a pure, unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the topmost perfection of all religious principles. And this is the last instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, directly presented by the Personality of Godhead. The Vedic conclusion is thus accepted by all acharyas, and those who are against this conclusion are only Veda, Vara, Ratas, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita 242. Bhagavan Brahma Katsnyena Tri Anvikshya Manishaya Tat Andyavasyat Kutasto Rati Atman Yato Bhavet. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna is the highest perfection of religion. So Sukadeva Goswami is now describing the position of Lord Brahma and how he is such a great personality. Lord Brahma, it is said that only the purest living entity of the universe can be in the position of Lord Brahma. And if there's no one qualified enough, sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself accepts that position. So it's a very, very elevated soul, Lord Brahma. And we were discussing a little while ago about the abodes of Lord Brahma. I was talking to Braja and some other devotees also about the abodes of Lord Brahma, Satyaloka, and then also there's 3 abodes of Lord Brahma. He lives in different places, but the main abode is the Satyaloka, in the topmost planetary system in the universe. And then he has, on top of Mount Meru, he has another abode or residence, and that's on top of the Mount Meru. And that Mount Meru goes right up to the Svargaloka. So that residence is mainly to give darshan to the demigods. And then there's another abode he has on the Pushkara Dweep. And that Pushkara Dweep is part of the greater Bhumandala. All the Dweepas go out, Jamba Dweep and all the Dweepas. And that Pushkara Dweep, there's a description there in the 5th canto. He has another abode there with 1,000-petal golden lotus there. And so on and so forth. So he has all these abodes. A very great personality. He gives his darshan. His main residence is in the Satyaloka, and a very, very qualified person. Now, in the 9th chapter of this Srimad Bhagavatam, in this particular canto, there's more a description on with this in the beginning of the creation, as mentioned here by Srila Prabhupada. The Vedas were taught to Brahmaji in the beginning of the material creation, right in the beginning of everything. And so the nice description is there in the 9th chapter of the 2nd canto of how the Lord Brahma appeared on the lotus flower, and he couldn't ascertain his origin, and he went down, and he couldn't reach to the end of that lotus stem. He went down the stem. And so, but he heard the sound vibration, tapa. Many of us have read this, tapa, and then he went back up. He understood that what that meant. He was enlightened within his own heart, and for 1,000 years of the demigods, he sat in meditation. 1,000 years in practicing tapasya. Just sat in meditation, meditating on that sound vibration, from within his heart. Now Prabhupada actually mentions there that that was a type of initiation for Brahma in the 9th chapter. That was a type of initiation, by hearing that sound. Later on, the Lord reveals to Brahma that it was he. It was mentioned that it was the waves that made that sound on the stem of the lotus, but actually it was he who initiated it. And then because he was so qualified, and the Lord is within everyone's heart, the Lord also within the heart can be guru. And sometimes if someone's very, very qualified, one can be initiated from within by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Paramatma. Now Prabhupada points out that not everyone can be like that. We shouldn't artificially imitate the position of Lord Brahma. He is a very, very special person, special entity. He is a quality. He is an incarnation of the mode of Rajaguna. So he's very. So one should not imitate. Think I can just meditate, and with the heart I get initiated. No. We're not like that. We're not on that level. But Lord Brahma, he was initiated by that, and he followed that sound, the instruction of that sound. So Prabhupada points out that the Lord can appear in person and he can appear in sound. Actually, for one who's very advanced, there's a subtle difference, but there's no difference on the absolute level. So he was initiated. There was a type of initiation. And then he sat down and did tapasya for 1,000 years. And at that time, the Lord, from within his heart, gave him the vision of the Vaikuntha. And in that sense also, now Veda means knowledge. Later on, the Vedas were expanded, and I'll explain a little bit about that. But the Veda means knowledge. So actually, part of that knowledge, the topmost part of that knowledge, is understanding the spiritual world. And so the Lord, being pleased with the tapasya of Lord Brahma, and him following that process, he gave him a vision of the Vaikuntha lokas and all that. There's a nice description in the ninth chapter of all the residents there, and the Lord there, the Lakshmi Devi, and the Lord there, and the personified elements of the universe. There's a description of that. All the different aspects of the ingredients were all personified there in the Vaikuntha. And so the Lord gave him that vision. And after that vision, the Lord Brahma was so overwhelmed that the Lord was pleased to manifest himself directly in front of Lord Brahma. So from within, and then the Lord appeared without on that same lotus of flower, and Lord Brahma was overwhelmed, and he bowed down before the Lord, and the Lord picked him up, and as mentioned, he shook his hand. Actually, Prabhupada explains there that Lord Brahma, actually his rasa is Sakya rasa. Is Sakya rasa. He is in the, just like everyone has their rasa, eternal rasa. Some are Madhurya ras, some are Vatsalya ras, some are Sakya ras, Dasya, so on. So Lord Brahma, this particular Lord Brahma, is in the rasa of Sakya. And Prabhupada actually emphasized he is definitely in the Sakya rasa. This is so his eternal rasa is like that friendship. That was a little bit manifest by the Lord when he shook Lord Brahma's hand, and so he said that he is very pleased with him for following everything, and he said actually everything will be revealed to you more and more. All you need to know about your service and all things will be revealed to you in your heart. And so Lord Brahma actually asked the Lord many questions about the different aspects of the creation and so on and so forth. So the Lord, you find this in the Chatushloki section of the 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He answered in those 4 seed slokas of the Srimad Bhagavatam from verse 9th chapter 33 through to 36. And Prabhupada gives very long purport to all those verses because they're very significant. In the seed of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chatushloka was in there. Later on, Lord Brahma, he explained it to Narad. And he asked Narad Muni to expand it also. Now, although there's only 4 slokas, someone may think, well, there's all 4 slokas, what more can you say? But there's 10 aspects, 10 characteristics of the Bhagavatam that Narad expanded, and then he taught Vyasadeva. So the Bhagavatam was expanded in that way. Now, as far as the Vedas, originally the knowledge was there to Brahma, and Lord Brahma in turn requested the rishis to expand, various rishis to expand those Vedas to dealing with the different sections of life in the world. One's the Kama Kanda section, one's the Jnana Kanda section, one's Upashana Kanda section. So he picked very elevated rishis of the universe. They are also empowered by Brahmaji and by the Lord from within themselves. The Kama Kanda mainly deals with the rituals, the different Veda, like the Rig Veda, the Yaju Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda. There are 4 Vedas, and they serve different functions. Yaju Veda, for example, is all the rituals, how to do all the rituals for worshipping the dead. Mainly is the Kama Kanda section, how to live in the world. A nice life, make your life auspicious, how to elevate yourself, how to even elevate yourself to the heavenly planets. And the demigods are worshipped. Main demigods are like Indra, Surya. These are the Agni, is another demigod, is mainly worshipped in the Kama Kanda section of the Veda, although others are also worshipped. But they're the main ones. A lot of prayers. And if you can read through, I haven't read the whole of the Vedas, but I've read through certain sections. So it's like that. So Kama Kanda section, the Yaju Veda is the Rig Veda is like all the rituals explained a bit more. The Atharva Veda is more like a different chants, especially for inauspicious things, mystical things, a lot of things like that. There's all sorts of sections to it. Sama Veda is also another songs. Now in the Veda there's certain songs to be sung at different rituals. when you're performing the different rituals, certain songs are supposed to be sung. So that's in the Samaveda. So it's very complicated and a very vast body of work. There's all sorts of additions also. The Brahmanas, which give explanation. The Brahmanas attached to each Veda. They give explanation, philosophical explanation of the ritual. And then there's the Aranyakas, which are given by the rishis. Aranya means forest. And so they're given by the rishis to their students. So this is the Karma Kanda section of the Veda. This was all expanded with Brahma. He gave the original, but then he requested to expand all these things. And of course, this expanded. Vyasadeva compiled it all, and he gave it to his disciples to also expand. So all these things. And Prabhupada actually mentions that this is the way of understanding on the transcendental path. Just like Lord Chaitanya asked the Goswamis to go to Vrindavan and write the literatures and expand on so many things in so many ways. So this is continuously going on. Karma Kanda section. Then there was the Jnana Kanda section. Jnana Kanda means in there you have more philosophical explanation of the material world, the spiritual world. The Upanishads are in there. In the Jnana, Upanishad means, Upa means to bring near, and Shad means to sit down. So generally the Upanishads are really taught in this way, that one comes near to the Guru and sits down and learns from the Guru. This is Upanishad. So the different Upanishads, some of these things are lost over time. Some of these Shastras are lost over time. Upanishads now, they say they have 108, but before there was more Upanishads. And so on. So one learns these things from that. Some of them deal with just matter and spirit. Some deal, and they're all, each one of them has a particular rishi who's expanded that Upanishad. Some of them, not all of the Upanishads, not all the authors who spoke those Upanishads are known. So over time these things happen. But nevertheless, so some Upanishads deal with, what is nature, what is the Supreme, and who we are. So the different things covered in so this is mainly the Jnana Kanda, and then Upashana Kanda means, Upa again, come near. Upashana means more about our relationship with God, and so on and so forth. The Bhagavatam can be counted in the Upashana Kanda section of the Veda, although it is separate. Again, so Lord Brahma, of course, he was initiated with all these things, and he received this knowledge directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And just to set the example, Lord Brahma studied these things scrutinizingly, with great attention and concentration of the mind. Scrutinize, and here the word tri anviksha 3 times. Prabhupada explains here that as far as Vedic scholarship is concerned, material scholarship is another thing, but it's called Vedic scholarship. Generally, was like that. If someone was a scholar, they would very much scrutinizingly study with attention. Attention means, attention is what it means. It means you're drawn to this particular subject. Your attention goes there with great attention. It's a very worthy subject matter to put your attention on. And not only with great attention, this subject matter is there, and concentration of the mind. Unfortunately, these days, these things are becoming less because of the distractions in materialistic life. To give attention to something, you have attention deficit disorder. You can't give attention to anything. Your mind's all over the place. Can't give attention to anything. And then concentration of the mind. You concentrate for 2 minutes, 1 minute, or someone can't concentrate at all. But if one wants to learn something, you need great attention, the words used here, great attention and concentration, and scrutinizingly study. I mean, concentration, and then you have to scrutinize, you have to go through it very carefully. So 3 times he did it, although he didn't need to do it, he was initiated within, and he received instruction directly. And the beauty of all these great rishis, and they could just remember everything. Imagine if we could do that. You read something, just remember. It's like it said, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he had a Sruti, he was Srutidhara, he could just hear something and remember it. And he was such a powerful personality. You know that story of, I remember that story of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that he, one time later on, he'd taken sannyas, and he was in Calcutta, and then there was one very famous impersonal school who wanted to really defeat him, because they saw his influence everywhere, and so they invited him for a debate on spiritual philosophy. They invited him for a debate, but they sent a message. They said, you can't speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so he agreed. Then they sent another message. They said, well, you can't speak on the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, or any of the Puranas. So he accepted. And then they sent another message. All right, well, you can't speak on the Veda, the Itihasis, and the Veda, you can only speak on the Vedanta Sutra. So he accepted. Then they sent another message, we cancelled the whole thing. We cancelled the whole thing. He was so powerful a speaker, they wanted to curb his influence. Then they thought the better of it. We're not going to debate with him. He's agreed to all these things. What's he going to say? He was so learned, he could remember everything. Imagine. So Lord Brahma, he is also like that. So he didn't really need to, but he showed the example, studied 3 times. And of course, in a scholarly way. The scholarly way means when you go through scrutinizingly and you study it and you pick and you reference it with other sections and so on and so forth, using different credible information and so on and that. Just like academic study, a scholarly presentation is done in a certain way, even in the material society. It has to be scholarly. If you can present something, but to do it in a scholarly way, there's a whole accepted norm for that. It has to be done scholarly, and you have to be credentialed yourself to have it accepted by other scholars and so on and so forth. So similarly, but then scrutinizingly studied, and then he ascertained. I remember Rabindra Sarup, my godbrother, who is a PhD, and then he was studying. And he was studying in this field, and by studying all the different works, he told me that actually he came across Bhagavad Gita and devotional work. He actually looked through everything in a very scholarly way, and then after he concluded that actually Krishna consciousness was the highest perfect, he actually came to that conclusion before he was a devotee. So very obviously, from previous life he was a devotee, and then he was but anyway, just even before a devotee. So that is the way actually, if one is scholarly scrutinized in a very open-minded way, then one will come to that conclusion. So Lord Brahma, he came to that conclusion that the personality of Godhead, that to come to that level and to become a devotee, or to surrender the Supreme Personality of God, is the topmost position. And Prabhupada confirms, and this is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita. The Vedic conclusion is thus accepted by all true acharyas, and those who are against this conclusion are only Veda Vada Ratas. Yami imam pushpitam, yami imam pushpitam vacham. Veda Vada Rata Nanya Rastiti Bharana. There's a verse from Bhagavad Gita. What chapter is that? I'll just let it, I'll read it for you. Yami Imam. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say they are nothing more than this. So Veda Vada Rata means those who are supposedly scholars of the Veda, but they get lost in all the other things. Living in the world, all things are covered. all things are covered, but what is the ultimate goal of a thing? That is the true Vedantist, actually, because Veda and Vedanta means what is the end, what is the conclusion of all this knowledge, so that one has to try to come to that level. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, who was giving the class on the Sunday who was the Sunday? Huh? Oh yeah. It was, and that verse was describing the so-called scholars. They go on and on and on about this and quote from here and quote from there, but they're missing the real point. And what is the conclusion? And they were compared to the croaking of frogs, wasn't it? Was the example? The croaking of frogs, just especially after in the rainy season, there's a lot of frogs croaking. We've got direct experience around here. And every morning when I come out to Takata, come to Mongaladi, I turn on the light, there's a whole bunch of frogs out there. And frogs are frogs, we don't mind frogs, but I don't like them there because you know why? Because when there's a lot of frogs, there's also going to be snakes. So you've got a lot of frogs around the house croaking away, and frogs are really are very attached to their voice. I remember down when we were in the early days down the White House, there was one frog we could never find him because he was in the drain. We finally figured out he was in the drain, one of the downpipes, in an inaccessible spot, and yet every day all echoing, and he loved it. We could tell he loved it, echoing. Finally, someone had to pull apart that section and get that thing out because he just wasn't moving. Anyway, so, and then frogs, and then there's snakes. So, one can croak away and quoting here and quoting and present themselves as a Vedavata, but actually they're Vedavatarata. The so-called scholars of the Veda, because if you're a real scholar, you scrutinizingly studied it actually without personal motivation. You study it to get something out of it. To get elevated to the heavenly planet, or to enjoy a nice life here. Then you'll see certain. If one's motivated, they'll just see certain things, and they'll dismiss other things, even though it's staring right in their face. If you've got some motivation there, you'll rationalise it all within your own mind because you want it this way. And then you'll put more importance on here when actually maybe more importance should have been put on the other thing, but you put more importance over here because you've got some a motivation to enjoy it and get gratification on that level. But if one is actually not like that and scrutinized very carefully in an open way, then one will come to the right conclusion, and this is accepted by all the acharyas. So Sukadeva Goswami is using the great Lord Brahma with great attention and concentration. So in other words, we have to try to be the same like that. Anyone can do the chanting, but if you want to rapidly advance on the path, if you want to go high, I always use, not always, but sometimes use this example of if one is training in sports, one can just be an observer of sports, one can train, but if you want to go to the topmost level, you have to really train hard and really focus and really put a lot of effort into it. You want to be a great athlete. So similarly, if one wants to go high to the topmost level, chanting can be done, following a particular lifestyle, but if you want to go rapidly up, then a great attention has to be, concentration. And especially the mind is mentioned here because the mind wanders off all over the place. We can't control it even for a second, but somehow if you focus on that, and also one gets a great enlightenment from it. One experiences paramdrishta, a higher taste by experiencing this transcendental knowledge and coming to the position of devotional service. One experiences some ecstasy. So then, when there's pleasure there, because the mind's all over the place, because actually it's very frustrated. It's seeking out pleasure, so it's just moving around all over the place, and then the mind, and then our body goes in that same way. And so the intelligence is dragged along and just has to work out wherever the mind's going how to do that thing. So the mind all over the place looking for pleasure. looking for pleasure, but when it finds the pleasure, when it can taste, when there's pleasure actually there, then the mind becomes very fixed and experiences as a higher taste. So this example of Lord Brahma, as I said, is used by Sukadeva Goswami, and we learn, and scrutinizing and attention and concentration and the mind there, and one can reach the highest perfection very, very quickly. So I'll read this verse again. Bhagavan Brahma Katsnena Tri Anviksha Manishaya Tad Adya Vasyat Kutasto Rati Atman Yato Bhavit. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizing and examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of God, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. Any questions, comments? Yes.
Technical question. Just normally we hear the Vedas as Shruti, Shruti, and then the Shrutis. The way you explain today, it sounds like the Vedas were expanded in the Smriti by different personalities. Are they actually Shruti?
No, they're Shruti because they're spoken by the rishis. The rishis expanded them. Lord Brahma, entrusted so many rishis with the expansion of the knowledge. So then the rishis from within were inspired, and then they spoke, because originally it was all spoken knowledge and passed down. So that because it was spoken, then it's a Shruti. So it's considered all those things. Well, all these things, Upanishads, Veda, all are spoken, and then the Smriti is a little different. Is histories and so on and so forth, and like the Itihasas and the Puranas, all histories about others. And there's some instruction in there as well. So just like Bhagavad Gita. Now Bhagavad Gita, interestingly, can be considered both. Most scholars accept this, that Bhagavad Gita can be both Shruti and Smriti, because and technically because it's in the Mahabharata, which is a history and so on. Of course, in histories there's all philosophy mixed, but it's categorized mainly as a history. And so therefore it is a Smriti, but because Krishna spoke directly it, therefore it's considered a Shruti. So Bhagavad Gita can be considered both Shruti and Smriti. And so Smritis are histories spoken about other things, and the Shrutis are direct instructions given by the sages. So they're all Shruti. All those things are Shruti. Any other question? Yes.
I was just wondering why when we refer to Vedantists, it's always linked to impersonalists. Why is that? Because the Vedas mainly lead with impersonal liberation, or?
No, not the Vedas. In the Jnana-kanda section, and especially because one conclusion of the Upanishads, for example, is that impersonal level. So therefore, that is the end of that particular type of knowledge. So therefore, they're all Vedantists they study. But then there's another level again. So all are considered Vedantists. Like that. But the real Vedantas, the highest, topmost, is considered those who become to the platform of devotional service.
Because I was reading in a first article about Srila Prabhupada was explaining that the Vedas mainly deal with Jnana-kanda and Karma-kanda. But he didn't mention that actually the Vedas deal with Bhakti.
That's the Upashana Kand. Upashana Kand, in the Upashana Kand, that Puranas, Bhagavatam are considered in the Upashana Kand section of the Veda. So that's considered on that level. And also, other works are in there as well. But the Jnana-kanda is mainly the Upanishads and that type of thing in the Jnana-kanda section. So the Vedantists, but of course, there's talking about Vedantists and the topmost Vedantists. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that, all are considered, just like transcendentalists. You find in different sections of the Bhagavatam, the Mahatsevan Vardamahu Vimuktana, who is the Mahatma, who is the transcendental. And in that one verse that it said both the impersonalists and the personal are transcendentalists. They're both transcendentalists because they're pursuing the path of transcendence. They've decided that is what they want to do, and that is the perfection they want to achieve. So they are transcendentalists. We accept that also, but we always going to say, well, we'd like to go to the topmost, even more than that. So they're all Vedantists and all transcendentalists.
No, I totally understand that. I'm just wondering if when dealing with bhakti philosophy is mainly the Puranas, or is also contemplated in the Vedas?
In the Upanishads also there's mention, and quite often our acharyas quote different Upanishads, Katha Upanishad, and so some Upanishads deal more with the impersonal side, some deal impersonal and also bring in the personal. So in the Upanishads also there is sections on the difference between, the world, the Brahman, and the living entity and God. So it's more concentrated in that area. So you'd have to see which Upanishads are dealing with which subject matter.
And they describe Krishna as well?
Yeah. More the Upanishads not so much. That's more in the Bhagavatam. Upanishads describe the God, the concept of God and the personality of God, and Vishnu and like that. But Krishna is mentioned, the Kali Shantarana Upanishad, and the different things like that. So a little bit, but more in the Bhagavatam. Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Hare.